Oklahoma and Kansas State were in no-win situations with their quarterbacks coming into 2024, and now after a couple of weeks, it's really easy to second-guess the decisions that were made, and I don't think that that's necessarily 100% fair. So coming into 2024, I guess maybe at the end of 2023 even, Kansas State and Oklahoma were in similar situations where they had seniors or about to be last-year players at the quarterback position and quarterbacks that they felt really strongly were going to be really good players for them, that were young guys that were going to be the future of the program. And so the options are, we go into 2024 with an established starter that we feel pretty good about and run the risk of those players, Jackson Arnold, Avery Johnson, transferring either before 2024 to somewhere else or sitting it out in 2024, riding behind players like Dillon Gabriel and Will Howard. Or we let those guys transfer and turn things over to the young guys. And you're in a no-win spot unless those two quarterbacks or one of those quarterbacks plays out of their mind. Because when you are starting a young quarterback, there are undeniably going to be growing pains. When Avery Johnson gets his first starts at Kansas State, there's going to be growing pains. There are going to be things that he is not as good as the guy you replaced him with. That doesn't make the decision to replace the other guy wrong. And there's been a lot of that. There's been a lot of, I bet you Oklahoma was wishing they didn't run Dillon Gabriel out the door right now. Yes and no. Because with Dillon Gabriel, is Oklahoma beating Tennessee? I don't think so. You can argue against that, and that's fine. That's your prerogative. But if Oklahoma, if you had to ask them, would you rather have one more year of Dillon Gabriel or 3 more years of Jackson Arnold, you're essentially mortgaging your future by staying with old reliable. And that sucks. It's a bad byproduct of the transfer portal era that we live in right now, where you have to decide between an established good player that you feel really strongly about and between a young up-and-coming quarterback that you feel like is the future of your program. But if you don't turn the keys over to them, they're not the future of your program. They're the future of somebody else's program. That's a bad spot to be in. And I don't envy Kansas State and Oklahoma State for being in the positions that they were. And I don't blame them for making the decisions that they did. It to me feels really simple. Do you go with one more year of Will Howard and one more year of Dillon Gabriel, or do you go with 3 more years of a 5-star quarterback you brought in? Now, it didn't work out in the first 4 games for Oklahoma, and now Michael Hawkins is going to start at quarterback for the Sooners instead of Jackson Arnold. And that's one of the quick downsides, again, that Oklahoma is seeing, that like, hey, if Michael Hawkins is our guy and it's not Jackson Arnold, we need to come to that realization and that decision pretty much as soon as possible. We need to find out whether Michael Hawkins can play, whether Michael Hawkins is the guy that we should have replaced Dillon Gabriel with. And you got to find that out basically now, because you don't want Michael Hawkins to go somewhere else, become a star, and then you made the wrong decision twice. So that's another bad situation that Oklahoma is in. But when push comes to shove, essentially the problem at Oklahoma and the problem at Kansas State, and this is a great problem to have, and I think if you're a fan of those two programs, you have to look at it this way. At the end of the day, our issue was we accumulated too much talent. We were too good at the one position that you probably can't be too good at. There's only one quarterback. Everybody knows the adage that if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. So you can only play one guy. And if your options are play one guy who's a senior that we think is good enough, or turn it over to the young guy who we think has a really high ceiling that we probably promised a lot to get to come here. Maybe not so much in Oklahoma's case, but in Kansas State's case, you had a really high-ranked top 10 quarterback recruit commit to your program in state. You probably made some promises to Avery Johnson, so it's easy to say, you're going to be our guy. And did he play well against BYU when Kansas State got trounced on Saturday? No, he did not. And I think that's just one of the things you have to live with. Is Kansas State going to miss out on a college football playoff berth because they turned it over to Avery Johnson instead of keeping Will Howard? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think the answer is yes. But I don't blame them, and I don't think you can blame them for saying, hey, we're going to go with a young guy who's going to provide us some growing pains, but we think is going to play really well for us. Will, we appreciate all you've done for us, but we've got to let you go. And for Dylan Gabriel, hey, you came in and filled the gap for us, and you played really well. We're proud of you, but we've got Jackson Arnold, or maybe now we got Michael Hawkins. We've got quarterbacks that we feel comparable on, but if you stay, they're not gonna. And that's a rough spot to be in. But that's the reality of the transfer portal era, that it is management of the roster as much as it is accumulating great talent for that roster. It is the NFL-ization of college football, where you have to deal with egos, where you have to essentially, there's not a steadfast salary cap, right? There is not a limit you have to stay under, but there is a talent cap. You can only accumulate so much talent at the one position that somebody has to dominate the playing time with. And does that stink? And does that sometimes run you into situations where you have to decide between an established starter who's got a bunch of experience, but is not the future of your program, and the young whippersnapper who has shown flashes of greatness that you feel really good about? Those are difficult decisions to have. And I don't know that there is a right way or a wrong way. I just know that if Avery Johnson leaves Kansas State, an in-state recruit who's the top 10 quarterback in America, and goes somewhere else and lights it up, ends up being a conference player of the year, a Heisman Trophy winner, first-round draft pick, whatever the case may be, you look like an idiot if you let that guy go. Alexa, stop. I don't know what I just said to get her going, but okay. This is the most random thing ever. I just think that that's just a byproduct, and there is no right or wrong answers. So Oklahoma looks stupid right now because they let Dylan Gabriel go. Kansas State got mollywopped last week. Do they look dumb? You could argue that, but I don't know that in reality they made either one of them the wrong decision, no matter the results. And that's a tough thing to, like, Brent Venables can't go into a press conference and say, like, what do you want me to do? Like, you can't say, well, yeah, I let the young kid play and we got beat. And Chris Kleiman can't go into a Kansas State press conference and say, yeah, Will Howard's playing really well at Ohio State, but well, what was I supposed to do? You just gotta eat it. You gotta take a bullet for your team, fall on the sword, and say, we made the decision that we made. We're happy with it. We feel like we got our guy, yada, 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 and go on about your day. And that's one of the kind of downsides of, you can't explain it away. Because if you do, the more you try to explain it away, the more I think you sound like you're trying to defend a decision that didn't work out for you. It's just a no-win spot. And no-win spots are not fun for anybody. So I don't blame Oklahoma. I don't blame Kansas State for the situations that they're in, because it's a byproduct of recruiting the most important position well. And if you're doing that, I don't think, more often than not, overwhelmingly, I don't think that that's going to turn around and bite you in the butt like it has those two programs. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.